Good morning. Glad you could join us. Hope you have nice weather today whenever you watch this. This isn't live, but there's some snow coming this week. I probably shouldn't mention that. So, are you proactive? What do I mean by that? So I remember like when I got my first car, it's like, okay, I'll change the oil. I've met some people that didn't know about changing the oil, and then they eventually sold those cars. So my dad used to have this bakery, and when I say that, my wife always rolls her eyes. So we'll call it a bread factory. And because it used to be like a mechanic is somebody who shows up when something breaks. But the thing that I learned with these ovens that are like 100 feet long and like 30 feet wide and can crank out, I don't know how many dozens of rolls per hour, is you don't wait till something goes wrong. The mechanics are on top of things with preventive maintenance. And that was like a new concept for me. But when it comes to me as a homeowner, I'm quite handy. I can occasionally change a light bulb and do a few things like that. I'm really pathetic when it comes to most things. It's got to hire somebody. And you don't really want to do that. So if you think, well, the roof is kind of bad, I'm always like, we can get one more year out of the roof, all right? And then we had some issue with our plumbing in our lower level where the water heater is, and the guy that looked at it said, you know, that's the oldest water heater I've ever seen. Well, he's a pretty young guy. We'll say his name's Dean. Anyway, so Dean says it's pretty old, it should be replaced. It's like, well, of course he'd say it needs to be replaced, you know? But Heidi and I talked about it and said, you know what, you do want to replace it now before the whole thing blows, because if it blows and you got water all over the place. So we give ourselves credit. We were proactive. Last week we decided we're going to change the water heater, but we weren't proactive enough. Sunday morning, I was downstairs getting the message ready, and I hear Heidi upstairs. I know the sounds of the house. The shower turns on, the shower turns off. I'm like, Heidi is quick in the shower, but nobody's that quick. She comes downstairs. I can tell where she's at, and then she comes out and she looks at me. The water heater is busted. It's like, dang. So you start thinking about water, how much you use it. Not only was it busted, but there's a valve that goes into it, but being that it's probably, you know, pushing 20 years old, the valve, you couldn't get it to move. And at first, I just thought I was being wimpy. Heidi tried it, she couldn't get it, and I tried it. Sometimes, like, both of us try something, then her daughter gets it, and then we just feel, you know. But this time, it was frozen. You couldn't move it. What that meant was we had to turn off the water to the whole house, otherwise it would just flow right through there. When you start thinking how much you need water, let me share something that Jesus said. Jesus says that in John chapter 4, he meets this woman at the well, and they're chatting about water, and then he says, if you only knew the gift of God that God has for you and who you're speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. Now, and she's just like, well, I want some of this living water. I mean, who wouldn't want the living water? So when I start thinking about that, it's like you realize, so we normally just have cold things to drink, but I have had warm water when I was so parched, and it was like the best thing I ever had. We usually don't let ourselves get to that point. But all the things we use water for, so the faucets are turned off, and so you've got to turn the whole water supply on and put water on the floor to get some drinking water. Then I remembered I have a bottle of drinking water that I use for tennis that's out in my car. It's frozen, but if I can get just a little more water in there, pretty soon it'll be good enough to drink. And if you're going to use a toilet, you got to think ahead. If you can't wash clothes, you can't take a shower, well, you get the point. But God's not short on water. He's not short on living water. I love what it says in John chapter 1. From his abundance we have all received one gracious blessing after another. God's not short on blessings. I remember I was saying to Russ, we were in Belize many moons ago, and there wasn't enough gasoline. So if we needed it in one thing, and like the generator, we'd have to siphon it out of something else. And I hated siphoning. If you do the thumb thing, that's great. But if you can't, I remember this one time I looked at this guy from Belize and I'm like, would you mind siphoning it? And he just looked at me like, dude, it's for you. If you want to burp up gasoline, you can burp it up. But you know what? With God's blessings, with the living water that God has, he's not short. There's an abundance of it. It's not like our house when you have to turn the water off. May you be filled with living water today. God bless you.